Welcome back to another episode of Dogs on the Couch, where everybody's allowed to have an opinion. It does not matter if you played the game you were watching. Okay? Please like, comment, subscribe, share. That helps with the algorithm and it helps grow the channel. Also, any agreements or disagreements, please put them down there in the comments section. Okay, I love a good debate. I could even have you on the show. All right. So by all means, like, share, comment, subscribe to Dogs on the Couch. Now let's get into it. I said I was gonna do this in the past previous couple episodes that I did. I said I was going to, compartmentalize this and try to go through it and talk about it. The contradictions that come from the Cleveland Browns sports media week to week, about how they're so wishy-washy. One week it's this, the next week it's that. One week they say this thing, but then they contradict themselves 3 weeks later and then go back on what they said before. When my thing is always like, hey man, don't be scared to be wrong about your thought, opinion, or prediction. You can't be right about everything, man. So give your thought, give your opinion, give your prediction, and stick with it. And I'm also not saying that, in some situations things can change. Like the more, information that you gather about something, it can sway your opinion. You know what I mean? Because you're gathering more information about it. It just so happens in this particular scenario with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, mainly just, quarterbacks and head coach or head coach / play caller. With the quarterback situation that we've had, there really isn't a thing of gathering more information. If you know anything about Jameis Winston or you've been watching football for the past 10 years, you should kind of know what Jameis Winston is. You've had 10 years of, information gathering about him. Like if 10 years isn't enough, I don't think you'll ever have enough information to be able to gather and make a assessment, if you will. You know what I mean? And when I don't have enough information, I will proudly say, you know what, I can't make a judgment on this yet because I haven't gathered the proper information. I need to see this or I need to see that in order to help me get a strong stance so I can see where I want to stand and stay there, not fluctuate week to week back and forth for every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So we're going to start out with, again, unfortunately, Quincy Carrier, contradiction carrier. And again, don't get me wrong, the guy actually every now and again has some decent takes. He just really fumbled the bag with this Kevin Stefanski, Deshaun Watson, and Jameis Winston thing. I think he was a little too emotional, like typical Browns fan / media personnel, and a lot of time reacting with emotion instead of logic. So here, mind you, he's been one of the biggest Kevin Stefanski apologists that there are. I mean, pretty much nothing will make him turn his back on Kevin Stefanski. I mean, Stefanski is his guy. However, like I said in a previous episode, just like a lot of the other sports media, Cleveland Browns sports media, when we lost to the New Orleans Saints, mind you, after they did all this praising to Jameis Winston and, Kevin Stefanski is not Kevin Stefanski, the offense is great and it's alive and well, the offense, look at this, whoop, whoop. And it was just so riding high, being emotional, not being logical. However, when we get to the Saints game and we lose, all of the Cleveland Browns sports media start putting out, is Kevin on the hot seat? And then they start switching. They start jumping ship. And then all it takes is a couple weeks, and then they jump backwards. Kevin's not going anywhere. So if you don't believe me, that's why, I do the research that I do, so that I can provide the context and I can also provide the clips of those individuals speaking themselves, so that you don't just have to take my word for it. So here's Quincy Carrier speaking about how he feels about Stefanski after the loss to the New Orleans Saints. Okay, mind you, he's the biggest Kevin Stefanski fan that I've come across in all these, Cleveland Browns sports media podcast episodes or whatever. So here we'll listen to what he had to say. Mind you, again, after just being so gung-ho about the Jameis Winston switch and Kevin Stefanski and his two-time head coach of the year awards, blah, blah, blah. Here's him talking about Stefanski after the New Orleans Saints game.
And for justifying Kevin Stefanski surviving this year, part of the reason for wanting Kevin Stefanski to stay on as head coach is because continuity makes it easier to build culture. But if that culture is not there anymore, and it does not look like it's there right now, then what exactly are you preserving?
Okay, really quickly. Culture. Here's my thing with that. He used the words right now. It doesn't look like the culture is there right now. I'm trying to figure out, in the past 5 years that Kevin Stefanski has been the head coach, when have we ever seen a quote unquote culture? I haven't seen it. Another word that could be used synonymous, in my opinion, is identity. You hear, people talk about that a lot. Your football team, what's the identity of your football team? For example, the Baltimore Ravens, you would think that their identity, is kind of like run the ball, smash mouth, tough, hard nose. Like that's what they're. Pittsburgh Steelers, gonna play really tough defense. They're gonna run the ball. They're not gonna get too high on the highs, not get too low on the lows, and they got a great head coach. They got a great culture over there. Great system that they run. The Kansas City Chiefs, their culture, Patrick Mahomes. It used to be high flying, throwing the ball up and down the field. Now their culture is just kind of like winning, whatever it takes to win. They just kind of find what it takes to win. They're great schemers over there. Like that's the culture. Culture is like the New England Patriots when they had Tom Brady. It's like when you come in, you're doing things the Patriot way. This is the culture. Here, everybody does this, or, this is what the receivers do here. This is what the running backs do here. That's building culture. The closest thing that the Browns have had to a culture since Stefanski has been the head coach is smash mouth offensive line running the football. Like Nick Chubb. Like that was because, like, of all the things that we did, running the ball seemed to be consistently the best thing that we did. However, we didn't run the ball enough. We've never ran the ball enough ever since Stefanski's been here. We haven't ran the ball enough ever since he's been here. We was always screaming, give Nick Chubb the ball, run the ball more. At one point, we was playing a game, and you know how they show the fans in the stands? One of them had a shirt on, said, run the ball, Stefanski. run the ball, Kevin. Like, that's what it said. Run the ball, Kevin. This is a guy in the stands. Like, so that's the closest thing we've had to a culture or an identity. Because outside of that, the quote-unquote culture, well, let's take a look at it. Every time a player leaves, first of all, when players that are good elsewhere, when they come here, somehow it's like they lose their powers. It's like their powers just get zapped out of them when Stefanski get a hold of a playmaker. When a playmaker comes here, it's like he just zaps their powers away. That's for starters. And then every time a player leaves here after looking like who knows what while they was here with you, when they leave here, first of all, they're disgruntled every time they leave here. Nobody ever says anything good about this team when they leave here. They don't even say no comment. They take jabs at the organization, at the Browns. They take jabs at it. Like they take jabs when they get up out of here. The I believe it was Zadarius Smith, the guy that we for the Detroit Lions, couldn't wait to leave. Amari Cooper. Hey man, get me up out of here. Like the list goes on. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but the list goes on. There's tons of players. When they leave here, they don't ever have anything positive to say. Absolutely not. Even dating back to Jarvis Landry, when Jarvis Landry was kind of on his way out from here, he kind of had to go on Twitter and say something about like, hey man, y'all questioning my, like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, I gave him my everything when I was there, and he did. Jarvis Landry, in fact, was like the closest thing to building culture that we had here, because we was doing Hard Knocks back then, and they had a scene of him getting up in the wide receiver room and holding everybody accountable. Like, check this out. I know we tired. I know we hurt, but we got to get out here and we got to practice. I'm tired. I'm hurt, but I'm still ready to practice. Again, culture. When we speak about that, fast forward to Stefanski. He runs a soft, like preseason thing. You don't have to be here. Who really cares? It doesn't really matter. Preseason game, we not playing people. It doesn't really matter. You don't need to gather any continuity, or we don't need to be building any culture. We'll just figure it out when the regular season gets here. That's not building a culture. Not only that, what else could be considered culture? Pre-snap penalties, or just penalties in general. Ever since Stefanski has been the head coach, we've been top 10 in penalties every single year that he's been the head coach. I'm going to do another video where I dive deeper into that. I'm not going to go all the way into that at this particular moment. But when we're speaking about culture, to say that it doesn't exist right now, like you said it right after the New Orleans game, well, it doesn't seem to exist right now. It never did. So the fact that he tricked you into thinking that there was some kind of culture that was built here, that's wild. He's a magician. To be able to convince you to think that there was some form of a culture that was built, and if it is a culture, it's an erratic one. Like, it's all over the place is what the culture is. There's no standard. It's just all over the place. Okay? Now, as we dive a little deeper into what he's what he has to say here about Kevin, and he has quite a few things that he goes through, that he talks about in different areas where he says pretty much, like he really thinks Stefanski is on a hot seat. This particular portion that we're going to listen to now is where he's saying that he's finding a hard time finding an argument, basically for Stefanski, etc., keeping him on board, that kind of thing. Similar to what he was just saying, like, with the culture. Like, if that's not going to be the case, if we're not building that or whatever, what are we preserving then? What do we, the continuity? And then not only that, the continuity that we speak of, it seems to only be with the head coach, the GM, and the chief strategist. It seems to only be Stefanski, Barry, and DePodesta. That's the only, like, well, we can't break those guys because we got to build the culture. We can't get, it's like, well, that should happen with the whole coaching staff, because when we had a great year with a whole bunch of great coaches, we had AVP, when we had Bill Callahan, we had Stump Mitchell. Like, when we had all of that, what we did, because, we should have got rid of Stefanski and just got a new head coach, kept all the other guys, or just let the new head coach pick the people that he wanted. Instead, we let Stefanski get rid of AVP, get rid of Bill Callahan, get rid of Stump Mitchell, and bring all these new coordinators in. But I thought we was trying to do continuity. I thought we was trying to build culture. Oh, that only applies to the head coach, the GM, and the chief strategy officer, or whatever DePodesta does. Nobody really seems to know what he does. But now here's Quincy speaking about, basically not knowing, what the argument would be to kind of keep Stefanski around.
The inability season to get these guys ready for a game. Like the Browns have not started a single game where I'm like, oh, they ready to play. Not one game. That's the stuff that I look at and go, I don't know if Kevin can survive that, man. Because I don't know what the argument is for him to survive it. And I'm saying this again as somebody who has been able to see what Kevin's been able to accomplish a lot clearer than most.
So there, he's telling you he's a Kevin Stefanski apologist. And I've been able to see what he's been able to accomplish. Kevin Stefanski's record currently is 40-40. It's 500. You've accomplished mediocrity. That's what you've accomplished. You've accomplished mediocrity. Like, that's what you've accomplished, man. So that's ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry. I have, it's like you almost be at, almost like a loss for words. When you hear some of the stuff that these guys spew. And then, what we'll do is let's take a dive into the contradiction for that particular piece before we move on into the next set of contradictions. Because here we'll have to listen to, just a few weeks later, after he just said that he couldn't really find an argument to keep, Kevin around, etc., whatever, what have you. After we just heard him say that, now we will have to listen to him change his stance. Just a couple weeks later, he has a completely different tone. Because right there, he's like, I don't know about this, and I don't know how he survives this. Like, I don't know. So now, let's listen to him contradict himself just a few weeks later.
The first coaches in this conversation I want to have about are the coaches that I think aren't going anywhere, that people might bring up and think might be going somewhere. Kevin, obviously, he's safe. Andy Dickerson.
Kevin, obviously, he's safe. But just a couple weeks ago, you had a whole video about how you don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't think Kevin Stefanski can survive this. And then just a couple weeks after that, well, Kevin's not going anywhere. He's safe, right? We know that. We know he's not going anywhere. He's safe. He's not going anywhere. We know that. Do we? Because just a couple weeks ago, you were saying something completely different. Like, you got to make that make sense to me, man. The contradictions are absolutely, they're mind-boggling. Like, I be having trouble keeping up with them all, trying to write it all down. Like, look at all these contradictions that these people have. It's just it's one after the next. Let's talk about Leroy Hoard, because I went over some things that Leroy Hoard, had to say, a while back, when he was just extremely, extremely, extremely high on Jameis Winston. And again, in some areas, I kind of felt like he was being, again, like overly emotional with like his takes, if you will, because, again, I understand that, I've never tried to make it seem like Jameis is just this terrible quarterback. But the only thing I've ever said is the guy is an interception machine. Like, that's what he is. And if you don't know that by now, when will you ever know it? And then from the very start, what I said was, with all of the problems that this team has, that everybody likes to overlook because they just want to pile on to Deshaun Watson. These people don't know football. All they know is emotion, and they just want to pile on to Deshaun Watson. Oh, it's all him. It's all him. When I used to be saying, like, with the kicker missing kicks, the line can't block, you don't got no run game, the wide receivers dropping the balls, like, how are we overlooking all that and saying that it's the quarterback? But with this particular clip here with Leroy Horde, former NFL running back, you'll hear him. This is, again, after the Baltimore Ravens game where everybody's riding high on Jameis Winston. Oh, Jameis is the savior. Now, Jameis can do no wrong. Jameis can do no wrong. And I made mention of this before. Leroy Horde said, I'll take the interceptions. And I when I heard him, are you crazy? What real team is going to be like, I'll take my quarterback throwing interceptions. I'll take it. What? No, I don't care how good you looked. I don't care, how much we won by or anything like that. Hey, check this out. Going forward, I need you to not throw these interceptions, buddy, because one day it's going to come back to bite us. So I don't need you throwing these picks. So here we're going to listen to Leroy Horde actually say it, so that way it's not just me saying it. You can actually hear it, quote unquote, from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
They are guys that throw the ball down the field.
Yes. And they're not afraid to throw it.
They're not afraid to throw it down the field. Now, the thing with Jameis is he's prone to turnovers. And that was one of the things that terrified me. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to backtrack on what I thought last week.
Wow. Okay.
And that is this. I'll take the interception.
I will too.
Right.
I will too.
I'll take them.
Preach. I'm with you.
You know,
I'll take them. Preach. What? Are you kidding me? Like, that's being emotional. You're just so wanting to pile on that Deshaun Watson is trash that the instant you get a hold of anything else, I'll take it. Realizing like this, I mean, if you kind of look at it, this is kind of like, this is trash too. It ain't really much difference. This trash is just in a better bag than the other trash. This trash is in a Glad bag. The other trash is in a grocery store bag, plastic bag. This trash is in a Glad bag. It's still trash. Like that's how I say with losing. You want to lose with a Glad bag instead of losing with a plastic bag. You're still losing. Like, for me, it's not a difference. You're still losing. The goal should be to win. Like, you're still losing. So we'll hear Leroy Horde go from, I'll take the interceptions, and everybody saying, preach. We're going to go from that to hearing Leroy Horde preach, quote unquote, patience. Now, you just heard him say he knows how Jameis is. Okay, he just said that he knows how Jameis is. He even said, he's going to backtrack what he said. Like I said, they flip back and forth all the time on where their stance is. So you heard him say, I'm going to even go back on what I said before. Bring on the interceptions. I'll take them. And then you hear guys preach. Like this is what you want. So 9 interceptions later, let's hear if he has that same enthusiasm about just letting Jameis just chuck it over the yard and we'll take the interceptions. I'll take them. Let's see if he's got the same energy here. Oh, wait. Hold on. Forgive me. I turned the volume down. My bad.
and I just wish, and when I watched the game, I kept saying that to myself. I kept saying, James, patience. It's not going to be there every time. This is not last week.
It's the Steelers.
Got to say it.
The Steelers got on that tape. Yeah. They was like,
Hey.
Like, you weren't saying that before. You said that you was even going to backtrack. Bring on the interceptions. I'll take it. Now you saying when I'm watching the game, oh, Jameis, you don't have to, oh my goodness, you don't have to. That's who Jameis is. That's who he's been the entire time he's been in the NFL. You were just so emotional after that first game, after him beating the Ravens, and all of the stockpiling on the Deshaun Watson, and he's so terrible and he's garbage, that you emotionally want to hop on to something, and then you let your emotions trick you into thinking that this was something that it wasn't. You'll also hear in this same clip, you'll kind of hear Leroy speaking about some of the things that I have personally said a ton before on this channel, and speaking about these situations where, you know, it seemed like the only thing that Cleveland Browns media and Cleveland Browns fans were focusing on is the stats, the numbers. Oh, Jameis Winston's throwing for 300, 400, 500 yards. Look at the yardage. He's throwing for so many yards. He's got all these yards. He's throwing for the yards. And before any of these people are saying this, I was the one to say, so is the game about winning, or is it about your quarterback throwing for a whole bunch of yards? Like, what's the goal here? And that's why I said, like, if the goal here with the Browns is we just want to have a quarterback to throw for a bunch of yards, okay, well then I'll get on board with y'all's celebration. But if the goal is to win, I don't care how many yards you throw for. Did you win? That's all I'm worried about. Did you win? I don't care how many yards you threw for. That's an individual statistic. Football is not an individual sport. It is a team sport. So let's listen to Leroy Hoard kind of speak about being caught up in the numbers.
That was in front of him. Like, we get so caught up in the numbers of it, we don't get caught up in success. You see what I mean? And so from that standpoint, if I would have taken and been 65%, but only had 180 yards passing, that might have helped the team more.
Pause it for a second. But we used to make it seem like, 180 yards passing, that's not good enough. We need somebody to throw for over 200 yards. That's what we need. We have got to have somebody that throws over 200 yards. We have to have that. We need that. We have to have that. That's the most important thing. Now the tone seems like it's changed a little bit for whatever reason. Unfortunately, right here, I do gotta make a mention about Kevin yet again, kind of playing a part in this whole thing that's going on, because they were bringing him up in this conversation with Leroy and speaking about like the Hard Knocks episodes that's been happening here lately. I haven't got a chance to check them out yet, but I will at some point. But here's where they're speaking about, I guess, where the Hard Knocks caught Kevin in one of these games. Kevin was saying something to Ken Dorsey, telling him, keep the ball in Five's hands. We're at a 400-yard clip here. Keep the ball in Five's hands. Basically telling him, hey, keep throwing the ball. He got 400 yards. We could probably get 500. So let's listen to that real quick.
It's all he did in Buffalo. It's all he does here. Well, here Kevin is encouraging him, just keep it in Five's hands and let him rip it, because that's what the game was dictating, and because Jameis was piling up the yards, and Kevin told him, hey, we got a 400-yard game here. Keep it in Five's hands. No matter what you do, let him throw it.
Kevin, why did you give up why did you give up the play calling if you gonna radio to Ken Dorsey and tell him what to do? Why did you give up the play calling? Why? Why give up the play calling to still be trying to tell Ken Dorsey whether to run or pass? Why did you give up the play calling? Why? If you still want to control the offense and what plays are going on and who's throwing or whatever the case, take the headset back, take the play sheet back, and keep calling the plays yourself. But if Ken Dorsey is the play caller, let him call the plays. And again, with him doing that, in a sense, what he did with that was he kind of proved a point that I had said in previous episode, where I was like, it was a ridiculous 4th and 1 that we ran in the Steelers game this past Sunday. A ridiculous 4th and 1. It's kind of like this trick nonsense BS play. Who knows? And I was like, oh, in my opinion, that's a Stefanski play. I'm like, even though Dorsey's supposed to be one calling the play, I'm like, in my opinion, I think Stefanski probably got on the headset or something like that and slipped that in there, and we need to run this. And I believe that was a Stefanski play. And I said that even if Stefanski didn't get on the headset and call that, Ken, if you looked at this, oh, this is Stefanski play, I'm gonna call this, and you called that, you're a dummy. Shame on you. You shouldn't have done that. That's extremely terrible. So on one end, we hear a coach, Mr. 2-time Coach of the Year, fraud. We hear him basically encouraging an offensive coordinator to call certain plays based on stats. Oh, we're working on a 400, 500-yard game here. Keep the ball in Five's hands. How many yards Winston has should not determine whether or not we continue to throw the ball or not. It should be, is that good for the team or is it not good for the team? Like, that's what it should be. And you should go play by play. Feel out the game play by play. Not no matter what, just keep throwing it with him. We working on something big here with these stats. Is the game about stats or is it about winning? Here we'll take a listen to a difference in head coaching and mentalities, like a mediocre mentality and a winning mentality. Because, the same Hard Knocks thing, they got some clips from the Pittsburgh Steelers and their head coach, Mike Tomlin. And after we just heard Kevin Stefanski, like, basically catering to stats, let's hear what Mike Tomlin had to say to his team about what they should, what's going on with, the game is coming up. Let's listen to what Mike Tomlin had to say.
Talking to the captains of the Steelers, and which he says, because the Steelers put up huge numbers offensively the week before too, playing against Cincinnati. Russell Wilson threw for over 400 yards. And he said to the leaders, he's like, I don't want anybody looking at their stats or getting overhyped from their stats last week. This is going to be a
just
different
win the game.
That's exactly what he said. We just got to win the game. But who cares about the stats?
He said they're going to take extra special care of the ball because of the pick sixes that they had against Denver.
So here you have a winning head coach. He's clearly a winner, because I don't know how many, what is it? He's never had a losing season since he's been there or something like that. So he's a winner. He's a winner. He has a winning mentality. He's a winner. He's won more games than Kevin Stefanski can dream about. Mike Tomlin's a winner. And what is he saying to his team? Hey, we don't care about no, I knew we threw 400 yards last game. That was nice. We might not necessarily been trying to do that, but that's the way that it happened. That was nice. Hey, but we don't care nothing about no stats. We just trying to win the game. Make sure you remember that. Make sure you keep that in your mind. This ain't about I don't want nobody looking at no stats. Don't be looking at no stats. This is about winning the game. That's what this is about. That's why we line them up. To win the game, not for stats. Okay? So, again, in my opinion, that that points out where we have, I don't know what type of losing mentality here, where we're like, hey, well, we don't care that we lost. We don't care that Jameis threw these interceptions. Look at the 500 yards. He's throwing for 500 yards. Give him a 3-year extension. Give it to him right now. Because look at all these yards that he's throwing for. Doesn't matter if we're winning or losing. By golly, look at these yards. And then you have a real winner You know what I'm saying? You get insight to what a real winner is saying, and he's like, bro, we don't care nothing about these stats. Don't be worried about these stats. We're trying to win the game. Now, here's where you'll hear Leroy Horde kind of, support that aspect, support that mentality, and kind of give more context or just pile on with what I have been saying as far as winning is the main goal. And it seems like when the Cleveland Browns sports media gets emotional, like they do every week, they lose sight of the ultimate goal, which is winning the game. You get caught up so much in trying to bash Deshaun Watson and prop up Jameis Winston so you can say, see, Deshaun is just so terrible. See, you put any other quarterback, Jameis, in there, and then now we're amazing. So it wasn't Stefanski's fault. It was all Deshaun's fault. See, it's like you just fall into this emotional trap because you're so busy trying to prove that Deshaun Watson is trash and that Kevin Stefanski is a good head coach, that you just start losing track of what the whole purpose is when you play the football game. So let's take a listen to Leroy Horde on this one.
That sometimes we get caught up in winning a certain type of way, and we forget that the main goal is winning. You see, one of the, and I remember last year, J.J. McCarthy threw 8 passes.
I remember that game.
Yeah.
Right. And what they said after the game was, it's not about throwing for 300. It's about winning. And that is always going to be true. Like,
facts. That's always going to be true. It's not about throwing for 300. In fact, one year I can remember 49ers were having a heck of a year. I think Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback that year. And you know, Jimmy Garoppolo was never liked by the media outside of his looks. Pause. They loved the way he looks. Pause. But they didn't think he was like the best quarterback or the best arm or anything like that. And the 49ers was winning, kept winning. And then one game they won. Jimmy Garoppolo might have had 15 passes that game. I don't know. And then they kind of asked Jimmy about it up at the podium. And Jimmy was like, I don't care how many times I threw the ball. We won. Like, we won. I don't care how many times I threw the ball. What does that matter? I don't care. We won. Did we win? Oh, okay. Well, I don't care. So if that's what the team needed me to do to win, well, then that's what the team needed me to do to win, and I'm going to do it. If they need me to do it again next week, that's what I'm going to do. If they need me to throw the ball 5 times next week, I'm only throwing it 5 times then, buddy, if that's what the team requires from me in order for us to win. Now, as we move on into the next segment of contradictions, we have a former NFL quarterback, Sean King, who was he is a huge Jameis Winston. He might be on Jameis Winston's payroll, if you ask me. He might be on Jameis Winston's payroll. He just might be. Because some of the things that you're going to hear him say about Jameis's performance in this past Sunday's game against Pittsburgh, where he threw 2 interceptions. One, an inaccurate ball. He throws an inaccurate ball and it gets picked off. The other one is a screen that was clearly blown up, and instead of just dirting the ball and living to play the next down, he floats the ball, trying to float it to Nick Chubb, and it goes right into the defender's hands. We're going to listen to and hear Mr. Sean King make excuses for the interceptions that Jameis Winston threw. And hear him also say that Jameis Winston played winning football. in that game against this past game against. He played winning football. Mind you, the Browns didn't win, but somehow Jameis played winning football. So let's kind of take a listen to him put his cape on, and try to help continue to try to keep what prop is left for Jameis Winston.
I didn't say it. This is what Leroy Hort said. Don't blame me.
You said Jameis played his worst game.
Yes.
I thought Jameis played winning football. I mean, let's put it in context. First of all, they're playing, in my opinion, the team is capable of winning the Super Bowl this year.
What? He played winning football, but y'all lost. And then you say, oh, well, in my opinion, they're playing a team that could potentially win the Super Bowl this year. You caping, bruh, because this team that you're talking about that could potentially win the Super Bowl this year, you just played them 2 weeks ago on Thursday Night Football, and you won. And when you won, everybody was taking victory laps. So, like, I don't understand. Like, this team beating for a Super Bowl, basically making it seem like they just this juggernaut. That wasn't what you were saying 2 weeks ago when you beat them on Thursday Night Football. Like, it wasn't just all praise due to the Steelers. These guys are Super Bowl bound right now. These guys are, oh my goodness, they are a Super Bowl team. I didn't hear any of that 2 weeks ago. Like, I was saying that, in regards to, like, with Russell Wilson, because, last year, Russell Wilson was in Deshaun Watson's position. Everybody writing him off. He doesn't have it. He's slow. He can't scramble. His arm has never really been that good. We were just, we were tricked. We were bamboozled. He doesn't have it anymore. He's not an NFL QB. And then next thing you know, he get over there with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he starts looking like the Russell Wilson of old. So here we'll move on to where Sean King makes a contradiction that was greatly greatly overlooked with what he's going to talk about here. To protect Jameis Winston, he's going to bring up something else. So let's take a listen to this.
Benito had from the Broncos. Man, that's a phenomenal play. And here's what's so crazy when people get focused on the quarterback position and they don't know how to evaluate it. If Dustin Hopkins, who's paid to make field goals, just makes his field goals, that's a 13-13 game. Jameis drove him down the field at the end of the first half.
Sorry, I gotta pause. Wait a minute. Did you just say, well, if Dustin Hopkins makes his field goals like he's supposed to, he's an NFL kicker? Wait a minute. Wasn't that the same thing? Well, I don't know about others, but that's the same thing I was saying about Deshaun Watson. Like, Dustin Hopkins didn't just start missing field goals. He didn't just start missing field goals when Jameis Winston took over at quarterback. Dustin Hopkins was missing field goals all year long. So the same thing that you're saying about Jameis Winston, like, well, if Dustin Hopkins just make the field goals, we good. If you go back and look at them games early in the year, it's more than one of those games, because Watson only played 7. It's more than one of those games where if you go back and look, if Dustin Hopkins just makes his field goals like he's supposed to, you have a completely different game and probably a couple more wins. So when it was Deshaun Watson, well, we not really talking about the kicker all like that. We're not pointing at the kicker as him being a problem. But when it comes to Jameis Winston, when we just talking about, because we just emotionally love him so much because he's the preacher man / used car salesman. When it comes to him, because you just like him as a person, oh, well, Dustin Hopkins, They talking about an interception that this guy threw, and he bring up Dustin Hopkins missing a field goal. We're not talking about that. We're talking about these interceptions that Jameis Winston keep throwing. We talking about that, and you bring up Dustin Hopkins missing field goals. He was doing that when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback. And everybody still pointed at Watson and said, you're the problem. So why now are we not pointing at Jameis Winston and saying, you're the problem? You throwing these interceptions is the problem. That's why we keep losing. Keep the same energy. That's what I do. That's all I be wanting. So the next clip we'll hear is of Sean King criticizing the 4th and 1 play call, which, mind you, I've been extremely critical of Kevin Stefanski and the offensive coordinator's play calling. Now, I've been much more critical of Kevin Stefanski's as opposed to Ken Dorsey's, because Ken Dorsey only has 6 games worth of play calling. Kevin Stefanski has 4.5 years worth of play calling. And in those 4.5 years of play calling, I've seen a ton of bogus, dumb 4th and 1 plays. I had it on one of my recent episode, on one of the episodes, I went crazy talking about the third, or it was either 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 jet sweep that we ran with Cedric Tillman. And Stefanski was calling the plays then, wasn't Ken Dorsey. A fake something jet sweep with Cedric Tillman. So, again, that's why I was saying, like, this 4th and 1, I think Stefanski called that. But let's listen to what Sean King has to say about that 4th and 1 play call.
And the second time was when the Steelers had a huge lead, so they probably were playing defense a little differently, no?
Well, is it Jameis' fault that Stefanski and Ken Dorsey called the worst 4th and 1 play in the history of football?
Well, I don't know that they called it. I think
what used to be the worst 4th down play call in history was the Freddie Kitchens 4th and 9 halfback draw. Now, I guess Sean King is saying that this particular play call on 4th and 1 is the worst. Well, maybe because it was 4th and 1 instead of 4th and 9. But this is the worst 4th and 1 play call, basically, in the history of football. And I mean, he really, really, really goes in on this play call. And yet again, it supports all of my opinions, which is this has been going on. And if Freddie Kitchens got fired because he had what was notable, I guess, the worst 4th and 9 call in the history of the game. Well, if Kevin Stefanski has the worst, he was the head coach with the worst 4th and 1 play call in history, why on earth is everybody caping so much for Stefanski to be back? Why is everybody, oh, no, you can't get rid of him. What do you mean? You can't get rid of Stefanski? What do you mean? He's the greatest coach ever. Greatest coach the Browns ever had. And then when they use that, it's like, okay, but the Browns have been the absolute dumpster fire forever. So when you say that you the best coach the Browns ever had, that don't mean anything. That's the same thing I said about trash in a Glad bag and trash in a grocery store bag. Trash is trash. It's just in a different bag. It's in a bag that look nice. That's it. But the trash is still the trash. Let's listen to a tad bit more of this clip as it goes on, and then we'll get into the next contradiction.
I think it's possible Jameis changed the play, which he did.
That play had 3 motions on it. The one where they motioned Jerome Ford back to tailback and handed the ball to him on some kind of little ridiculous, mini,
he don't even know what to call it.
Kind of zone play and gets tackled for a loss. You know the play I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly the play. It was an awful play.
Yeah.
I don't know what the original design was, but what transpired is not what was called. Where the confusion was out. Stefanski said that after the game. That's not what we were supposed to do. So I don't know what.
And then there again, Stefanski says after the game, well, that's not what we were supposed to do. What? How do you have mix-up and confusion on a 4th down play? And not only that, 4th and 1. How is there a mix-up and confusion? You know why? because you didn't do football 101. Which you did later in that same game, you did football 101, which was line it up in QB sneak, and you got it. So why didn't you do that the first time? I'd rather you QB sneak it and not get it than do some weird trick, dumb play and not get it. I'd rather you just do the QB sneak and not get it. I'd much rather, I'd feel way better with that than you doing some trick play and then the trick play don't work. And then now because the trick play didn't work, now you don't get the first down. That's absolutely ridiculous. And they're saying that it was a terrible play call. So yet again, in my opinion, like I said, that was a Stefanski play call. And if he's got these terrible play calls, what is he involved with anything with the team for? For what? Because that was supposed to be one of his staples as to why he is a good head coach, because he's such this fantastic, brilliant offensive mind. And that's proven to be real mediocre. I don't think he's a brilliant mind. I think he's mediocre. That's what he is. He's mediocre. His record says that. So now here, as we move into the next contradiction, we'll hear Sean King again make an excuse for Jameis Winston throwing an interception by blaming the wide receiver. So let's take a listen at this.
Take blame off of anybody. I'm just saying, if you really look at that game, I mean, I thought Jameis played winning football. I'll be honest with you. Elijah Moore got to run full speed. Say what you want. I listened to the broadcast. I heard Tony Romo say Jameis should check that ball down. But listen, man, if I asked you, was Elijah Moore running as fast as he could on the second interception, what would you say?
I would say, how do you know if he's running as fast as he can or not? How do you know? You, not him. Only he would be able to answer if he's running as fast as he possibly can on that route. Like, only he would be able to have the answer to that question. You, I don't think, could just look at him and tell, oh, he's not running as fast as he possibly can right there. I mean, well, how do you know that, man? And not only that, but when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback and people were saying, like the wide receivers wasn't really creating separation and they seemed to be like kind of slow, if you will. No, that's not the case. It's just Deshaun. It's just Deshaun. It's just Deshaun. It's just Deshaun. And then even my boy Quincy Carrier, which I'm going to get into in a second here to add with the contradiction, he said that basically when Jameis got in, somehow the receivers were fast. All because Jameis was the quarterback instead of Deshaun. And the fact that Jameis throws the ball farther, it makes the receivers faster. And also the fact that, with Deshaun, they knew they weren't getting the ball. So why would I run hard? I'm not going to run fast because I'm not getting the ball. I'm 20 yards down the field and Deshaun can't throw past 8 yards. So I'm not getting the ball, so I'm not going to run fast. And he said, well, when Jameis get in there, well, you always got a chance to get the ball, so I'm going to be running fast every play. But now we got Sean King saying, oh, well, Elijah Moore wasn't running as fast as he possibly could. That's why Jameis Winston threw an interception. These are the contradictions are crazy. Not only that, let's hear what he has to say about David Njoku. Let's hear what he has to say about David Njoku.
I see David Njoku sometimes, and David Njoku, he's the worst route running tight end in football. He be walking a little bit. He be walking a little bit. Terrible. Now here's.
He said that David Njoku is the worst route running tight end in the National Football League. Now I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if that's true or false. I honestly don't. I would have to gather more information, looking at all of the tight ends in the NFL and check out their route running skills. But I know prior to this episode, I can't say that I've heard anybody say they'll complain about Njoku dropping the ball. Like they'll complain about that. But I can't say that I've ever heard them complain about Njoku being a terrible route runner. Like I can't say that one I've heard. I can't say that I've heard that. So that's the first time that I've heard that one, like that particular criticism of David Njoku. Normally the criticism of David Njoku is dropping easy passes, not being the worst route runner in the National Football League. Again, using excuses to try to cape for Jameis Winston's terrible quarterback play, instead of just saying that Jameis Winston played terrible at the quarterback position. Now let's hear Quincy Carrier speak about how with Jameis, somehow the receivers are faster or better, if you will, just because Jameis Winston is the quarterback.
Remember when people were talking about how the wide receivers have low miles per hours and they don't get much separation, and we're talking about these mile per hour numbers and these separation stats? Y'all remember that? We talk about stats like that, but we don't talk about enough how those stats are measured and how flawed it is to talk about those stats without understanding how those stats are measured. Again, we talk a lot about stats when we talk about football these days online, but I don't think we talk enough about understanding what a stat is before we just start spouting it out. We love when something tells us something's in the top 10. We don't be understanding what that stat is, though. We just go, it's top 10. And those two stats, miles per hour and separation, are a peak example of the fact that we don't understand these stats that we be throwing in these articles all the time.
And to me, honestly, what that kind of sounds like, because, in today's narratives, they always love to say, well, you didn't play the game. You weren't an NFL player, so you don't know. So Quincy Carrier, you're not an NFL player, bro. So like, you would think that the way people say, well, Sean King would know more than you. And then here you are kind of saying, like, basically, Sean King don't know what the heck he's talking about. Again, contradictions everywhere. Because here he is, again, this is the very first game that Jameis Winston took over. So everything, you don't understand what these stats are saying that these receivers are creating separation and that they slow and they're not getting open. And then even Quincy Carrier contradicts himself, because in this same video, I wish I could go further and play the clip, but I got to get back to the other video. He says he misquotes our wide receivers' speeds. Like, he misquotes it. He says he goes on to say that Cedric Tillman runs a 4.4. But when I looked it up, because first of all, I knew that wasn't true. Because you know guys who run 4.4 or 4.3. You know who they are because they always talk about it. I've never heard them say Cedric Tillman runs a 4.4. When I looked it up, Cedric Tillman runs a 4.54. That's maybe he forgot a number. He runs a 4.54. And when we talking about football, I'm sorry, like, it's a difference in speed between 4.4 and 4.54. Like, it's a big difference in that speed. Like, the difference is significant. I'll say that. It's a significant difference between 4.4 speed and 4.54 speed, especially when we talking about NFL route runners. Now I have to go back to the other video because in this one we have a ton of, it was just a ton when we talking to Sean King here. Here we'll hear him get asked about Jameis Winston's struggles to protect the football. Like, why do you think he's struggling to protect the football, whatever, what have you? Let's listen to what Sean King has to say in response to that.
That Jameis Winston has a problem with not understanding that? Or why do you believe that it seems that people will be making these superhero plays and picks against Jameis Winston that seem to be more disproportionate to other quarterbacks?
Well, I think because he has the narrative of being turnover prone, it's just anytime he makes a mistake, it's highlighted. It's magnified. I'm telling you guys, he threw a pick on a screenplay, and you got to go back and rewatch that play. Keanu Benton makes an unbelievable play to get that interception. And then the second pick, after I think they got a fumble, they caused a fumble. They were down, I think, 13 or 14. Tell me Elijah Moore is running full speed. This is a quarterback talking to y'all. Elijah Moore is not running full speed on.
See how you trying to use? Well, this is a quarterback to try to like help make it like but because I'm a former quarterback, I'm right. That don't mean that you're right, buddy. Michael Jordan is a former GOAT. He's still viewed as the GOAT by most people. He was a terrible GM. So just because he was the greatest player, that don't mean that he, can assess what's going on in the court, assess talent, and all that other kind of stuff. That don't mean that.
That seam route, he can run faster than that, and if he does, that's a perfectly thrown ball. He's gonna walks into the end zone for a touchdown catch.
I gotta go check it out.
You gotta go rewatch some of this stuff, man, because it's easy when you're watching the game on TV to get caught up in your emotions. It really is, especially when there's a predetermined narrative that already exists. But
wait, Sean, it's not a narrative; it's the truth. Jameis has.
It was so funny to hear, like, it's real when people who was on the same team start turning against each other. Because the other guy having the bull, he like, man, wait a minute, I can't just sit here and let him just get to saying this garbage. It's like, that's not a narrative, it's the truth. And even if it was just a narrative, my response to you, Sean King, is, well, that's the same thing that happened with Deshaun Watson. There was a narrative that was created about him that he does not have it anymore. That he's not worthy of, he's so trash and such a hot dog water quarterback, he can't be on an NFL team. He's terrible, he's trash, he doesn't have it, he's garbage, he can't do it, this guy's terrible. It was a narrative, and every single little thing that he might have done that might have been a mistake, every single little small detail, everything, they called him out on it, and they blew it up. Excuse me, like it was the biggest problem in the world. So again, if we did that to Deshaun Watson, why are we not doing it to Jameis Winston? Why? Why are we not doing it to Jameis Winston? We need to be doing the same thing to Jameis Winston that we did to Deshaun Watson. And in here, you'll hear him because he listening to himself and he knows that he sounds retarded. So here he tries to cover it up by saying, well, I'm not caping. He meant to say caping. He said capping. Well, I'm not capping for Jameis Winston. Yes, you are.
Time on the sideline. I thought he overthrew one more to Elijah. But other than that, I thought he played a real good game. And this isn't me capping for Jameis. I mean, you guys have had me on here all year. You know I'm a fair evaluator. I evaluated Deshaun Watson. I thought extremely fair the entire time. I'm just telling you, sometimes the narrative.
So if you was evaluating Deshaun Watson fairly and you calling him trash and all this other stuff, well, when the same things are taking place with Jameis Winston on the field that were taking place with Deshaun Watson, why aren't you saying the same things about Jameis Winston that you were saying about Deshaun Watson? If you're a fair evaluator and blah, 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 and all this other garbage that you're trying to throw out there to distract people. Like, why are you not calling the same spade the same spade? Why are you not doing that? Okay, and then last but not least, so that way I don't run too long on this video because there's a ton more. That's why I said I had to compartmentalize these things as we talk and put them in separate videos. Last but not least, after everyone saying, oh, Deshaun Watson, he's done. Get him out of the building. He doesn't even need to be here. Get him out. Get him out of the building. I don't even want him in here. Send him home. Send him home. We don't want him in here. First of all, that's stupid. That's dumb. That's for starters. And I'm going to talk about that on another video, why that's dumb and stupid. But, okay, send him home. Cut him. Send him home or whatever. Basically just don't be in the building. Get out of here. Deshaun recently had posted a video on his social media, one of his social media accounts, of him having dinner with his lady. He didn't even show himself in the video. He just showed the view, his lady, and what they were eating. Browns fans, for whatever reason, going crazy. Oh my God, what is he doing? Why is he not with the team? Why is he not rehabbing? Why is he not with the team? Why is he not doing? Why he should be with the team? He should be rehabbing. What is he? Oh my God, what is he doing? Why is he posting this video? What is he doing? Here you'll hear Sean King make a statement about that. Matter of fact, let's just listen to what he said.
I don't know if that. I don't know that we know that for sure.
Yeah, okay. Believe what you see. I would say this. I thought it was distasteful to rub it in everybody's face by posting a video.
Hey, man. I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you how.
And actually, the guy G. Bush that's finna speak up next, he actually calls Sean King out on that. Because I actually have the same stance, the same view, the same opinion. You're contradicting yourself. Because there's so many individuals, and I don't know if you were one of them, Sean King, but I'm just saying there's so many individuals. Oh, get them out of here. We can't have them. And the way that you cape for Jameis Winston, you can't want Deshaun Watson as your starter. You want Jameis Winston. So again, that would mean, hey, Deshaun, get out of here. Go. We don't even want you around, Mr. 230 million. Get out of here. Just pay him the money and let him go. Cut him, pay the money, and let him go. But then you complain when he does that. When he goes on and he's just living his life. You know what? Y'all don't like me. Y'all booed me when I tore my Achilles. Y'all cheered for that. You were happy that I tore my Achilles. You were happy that I suffered possibly a career-ending injury. You were happy that this happened to me. And then said, good, great, get him out of here. Get him out of town. And then you double down on it when you thought you found something with Jameis Winston. You double down on it. Yeah, get him out of here. We don't need a Deshaun. He's terrible. He's trash. He's a horrible individual. Then you start piling on about him personally. And you're not even keeping it about football. Me, I always keep it about just the sport. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, Deshaun, get out of here. And then when he posts a video that it's not like he in the video flexing, tossing money around like, see, I got 230 million from y'all. Wherever he was at and wherever he was having dinner at, he could afford to do that before y'all gave him $230 million. He could afford to do that before that $230 million. Please believe it. He could afford to do that before that $230 million. And if you want the man out and get him out and you don't want nothing to do with him and he can't be the starter and the only thing we know is that we can't bring him back, then why the heck are you so concerned about what he's doing in his personal life? Why does what he's doing in his personal life tick you off so bad? Oh, I know why. Because he's gone and your team is still trash. I'll get into everything else in the next episodes. Dogs on the Couch, signing off.